Friday, June 19th, 2026. Welcome back to SamCentre. I am your host, Sam. As always, thank you for taking the time out of your busy day, out of your week to be here with me. We have an exciting weekend of everything. Football, World Cup, I guess both football, right? And then UFC, as always. It's our UFC Friday show, so that will be the back half of our show. We are going to break down our final Week 3 thoughts for the CFL, and then we're going to chat about the exciting actual goals being scored at the World Cup. I was too harsh on soccer. Maybe I'm a fan. Spoiler alert, I'm not. But Messi, defying age, that's what we're going to talk about in the first segment. Without further ado, let's get into SamCentre. All right, so I just want to chat World Cup quickly and how there's been an exciting slate of matches once teams have settled into the tournament a little bit. There was a lot of draws, a lot of teams maybe not playing up to their potential, and then we saw these superstars. The reason soccer is so big worldwide, we saw Lionel Messi coming out and tying the record for the most goals at the World Cup in history, and it's a good chance now, as long as Argentina keeps playing, that he will advance and he will break that record. You know, incredible performance by Messi. This is likely his last World Cup, and he knew he needed a big performance, and to get a hat trick in their first game now sets him up to break that record, cement his legacy as the greatest player of all time, with Cristiano Ronaldo being one of the oldest players ever to play in the World Cup, and then guys like Jude Bellingham, you know, Harry Kane. We had big stars come out and score multiple goals. Kylian Mbappe over at France, he came and scored multiple goals in their first game. So you're starting to see the stars come out and really show levels to this. Canada soccer, right here behind me, they actually set a record, something that I think is incredible to talk about. In 70 plus years of action, we have scored 3 total goals at the World Cup. And today versus Qatar, as I'm recording this, yesterday as you're watching this video, Canada won by a score of 6-0, and that is now 6 goals in one game compared to 3 in 70 plus years at the World Cup. Obviously, Qatar was playing with 9 men in the second half, 10 men for most of the first half, but I don't care about any of that. I care about it being 6-0 in a soccer game, baby. You're going to see that score in hockey or in other sports like that, and you don't expect it to see it in soccer, but we did, and we saw it come from Canada, baby, on home soil in Vancouver in front of a sold-out crowd. It was very excellent to see. It's something Canadians and soccer fans, I'm sure, will remember for the rest of their lives. Now, job's not finished, obviously, but it puts Canada in an excellent place to advance, with Mexico and the United States also being in very good spots to advance. I think FIFA will be happy if all 3 of the host nations can make it out of there. Incredible performance by some of the stars. Great work by Canada. Lots more soccer to come. As you know, you don't come to SamCentre for that sort of stuff, though. We're going to talk the real football. Sorry to any European fans I may have, but the Canadian Football League, you know, a league that I love, a league I'm passionate about, and I say it every single week. We're going to just chat our game on Friday here, and then a few of our games left on the weekend. Obviously, we broke it down in more depth on Wednesday. BC has now ruled out a few wide receivers, and mainly more just in their depth, but it's going to affect their game against Hamilton. They're going to have to come in there and play against a high-powered offense. My prediction is still going to lean with Hamilton, but I think all of the home teams are in quite tough this week. I believe, you know, Edmonton, it's going to be an interesting game. I'm going to be on the sidelines. I might not be able to film much for you guys because we are going to have up to 100 millimeters of rain on Saturday for our home opener. So if you are going to consider some of these games, you have to think regular season, teams on the road, guys being ruled out, weather being a factor. There could be multiple matchups that go different ways. You know, Hamilton is loaded in the skills position. And if BC is now thin at the wide receiver position, Hamilton goes up early. It could be extremely difficult for Hamilton to claw their way back, or for BC to claw their way back into that game. If they don't have that wide receiver depth, if they're going to rely more of their defensive backs and their run game, it could be difficult. But if they can get up early on the flip side, you're going to see BC control the tempo of the game, and that is how that's going to go. With Toronto and Ottawa as my final closing thoughts, the game lines are quite close, and that reflects a game that should be close in that same way. I do think Ottawa is probably the worst team in the CFL, but we are going to see 2 of the lower tier teams. Either could surprise us, but like I said about Jake Mayer, certified Jake Mayer hater on this channel at SamCentre. Then we are going to move on with the Double E taking on the Montreal Alouettes, Davis Alexander never dropping a regular season game, as we mentioned on our Wednesday episode. He's only ever lost one career CFL start, and that was in the playoffs against the Saskatchewan Roughriders in the Grey Cup. So he talks about losing the big one, but that streak has to end eventually, right? It's impossible for this man to go undefeated in his entire career, but he is on pace to potentially tie Bo Levi Mitchell's record for most consecutive wins in CFL history. So it could be an incredible feat. Either we are going to see history not happen, or we're going to see it start to happen. Either way, it's going to happen in up to 100 millimeters of rain. So I would take the under on that game and also rely on the Edmonton Elks to use their ground game and short to intermediate passing. And then in our final game of the week, we are going to talk about the Saskatchewan Roughriders taking on the Calgary Stampeders. Like we mentioned on our Wednesday show, this is a big game for the CFL. It's going to be potentially game of the week, rounding up their Saturday triple header that they have. It's going to be a fun one. Saskatchewan, the defending champions, a team that shows levels each time that they match up. Vernon Adams might be ready to come out there and put on a show. I am still going to lean Saskatchewan, but obviously the home teams, you got to think one of them is going to win, right? I can't pick all four away teams and expect to be right, but Monday's episode, we're going to talk about it. You're going to tell me, SamCentre, you were completely wrong on everything, or I'm putting up that double E flag that I have here and we're having ourselves a Victory Monday show. Either way, I'm super stoked to talk about it. If you want more in-depth analysis on all four of the CFL games, please go back to our Wednesday show and look at that. If you want to watch soccer, it's on. I'm sure there's lots of other channels breaking it down. We are going to move into now the second half and the most exciting part of our show. On Fridays, it is the UFC Friday. Let's get into it. All right, guys, UFC Friday, something that we love to talk about over here. And we are going to be done talking about the White House card. No more milking that for content, even though SamCentre loves to get content. We are going to talk about the return of the Mac. Conor McGregor, baby. We are having Conor McGregor take on Max Holloway in a rematch from a fight they fought multiple years ago. You can't really take much into this rematch. We're moving up to 170 pounds. And I'll be honest, I love Conor McGregor. I think he's a man who has built up this sport in multiple ways. And I love Max blessed Holloway. There's two guys that you go in here, but if you look at their UFC and their fighting careers, they've taken completely different paths since their first matchup in 2013. We have Conor McGregor coming out there and putting on a show, becoming the double champion in the UFC. He beat Eddie Alvarez and he went out there and beat Jose Aldo. And Conor McGregor, the absolute star power, was born. He went out there and he boxed Floyd Mayweather. He came back and he fought Khabib, and it was obviously a chance for him to put on the biggest fight of all time in the MMA, as well as one of the biggest fights all time in the boxing world. And so after that happened, the hunger and that young Mac, it was gone. Conor wasn't the same man that we saw so dialed in. That fight before he fought Eddie Alvarez, I believe that Conor that night when he fought Eddie would beat any person at 145 or 155 in history in the cage. There's no way you can argue that. Obviously, there's great talent in there, but he was so dialed in. There's footage of him training that knockout, that counter shot that he landed on Aldo. There's absolutely footage of him saying, I saw his right hand twitching. And then he goes in there and he counters the right hand and he puts it on his chin in Brazil in front of all of these screaming fans, and he becomes the double champ of the world. After that, he's able to leverage his star power. He has massive fights with Diaz, with Poirier. He has fights with, like we mentioned, Floyd Mayweather. He's been the promoter at Bare Knuckle Boxing, or Bare Knuckle FC. And it's been a wild ride for the Mac. We don't see the same man who was champion, where now we see a Max Holloway who has stayed active and stayed extremely professional. I don't know if you can hate Max Holloway. As much as he's beaten some of your favorite fighters or he's lost to some of your favorite fighters, I love Charles Oliveira. That's his glove right there. I think he's the best combat sports artist of all time. But when you look at his fight against Max, it was hard to root against Max. He went out there at UFC 300. He points down. He gives us one of the best moments in history. Max has the moments where he's absolutely boxing up Calvin, and he's saying, I'm the best boxer in the UFC. He's talking to him the whole time. Max has these iconic moments, losing to Topuria, losing to Charles Oliveira up in a weight class. It isn't anything to be ashamed of. But the UFC knows what they're doing with this version of McGregor. They want him to get in there and get a chance at a win, and so they're having this fight be at 170 pounds. Conor has had the chance over these multiple years of not being active in combat sports to essentially, and I'm not going to blame him, I'm not going to accuse anything, but Conor is massive now. And obviously he always had a tough time with some of his weight cuts before, but he had his chance to really bulk up. And when guys get out of the testing pool, you have no idea what sort of substances they may be on. And so I'm not saying Conor McGregor went out there and took massive amounts of steroids, but what I am saying is he went out there and he took massive amounts of steroids for these years, right? That's why he's huge and he's recovered. And obviously that last fight against Dustin Poirier, breaking his leg in the way that he did, it was absolutely horrific. And it's an injury that many men don't come back from, right? And so you're looking at a guy in McGregor and having him talk to Ariel Helwani and go on that show and then have the face off with Max Holloway virtually where Joe Rogan was kind of moderating that. You saw a guy who seems hungry, who seems dialed in and seems ready to return. And the one thing that I like to preface, Mystic Mac is the greatest man on the mic that we have ever seen in combat sports. So it's extremely possible that he's tricking us. But when you listen to him, he starts to talk about getting dialed in with his faith, getting back dialed in and realizing that he's fighting because he's happy and he wants to fight. And that's what you want to hear out of McGregor. If he's coming back, he realizes now he's been on the Forbes list. He's made the multiple hundreds of millions of dollars. If he's coming back to fight, we're hoping it's for the love of the game and he's doing it the right way. Whereas Max is going to have softer hands at 170 for sure. And it might not matter against a guy in McGregor who hasn't been back in the octagon in so long. I don't know how to lean. I am going to tune in. I've been impressed with what Conor has been saying though in the lead up to the fight. But I'm always impressed with what Conor says in the lead up to the fight. That's why he is the greatest showman in the history of combat sports. There is a clip, and I encourage you all to go watch it. I'll never forget this moment. And my apologies for my horrible singing. But an Irish, one of his supporters gets up there on the mic and he goes, in Brazil, he starts singing a song where he goes, Jose, are you listening? Jose, keep your distance. McGregor's coming for you. He's gonna do you in two. Walking in McGregor Wonderland. And it's absolutely the entire crowd going crazy. And you cannot replicate the star power of that. Having Conor McGregor back active in this sport is not a bad thing. It is only positive. I am excited for this fight. Next month, every single one of us will be watching, and you can guarantee SamCentre will be putting out the videos about it. As for Max Holloway, get your money, my friend. You deserve this. You've been a wonderful, wonderful ambassador to the sport. He's active with the fans. He is a lot of people's favorite fighter. He is one of my friends' favorite fighters. You know, it's important for him to go out there and get paid. Get your payday against McGregor. Knock him out. Show everybody why you are Max Holloway. We are going to chat just a little more about some of the fight news that was announced recently, where Islam Makhachev is now taking on Ian Machado Garry in Philadelphia and an upcoming pay-per-view event. I guess, hey, no more pay-per-views in the United States, but here in Canada and other parts of the world, we do still have them for this year. And so this is a big event for the UFC because the dreams of the Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev fight were dashed on Sunday at the White House. And now I said we weren't going to talk White House card. That's the last time I'll reference it. But with Ilia Topuria losing to Justin Gaethje in the 155-pound championship fight, it's now clear that Ilia will not be moving up to 170 pounds anytime soon. And it's honestly clear that that dream from the get-go was probably pretty far-fetched. And so what we think about this now is this. Islam versus Garry is a great fight. Ian Garry, say what you want. Everyone will make fun of him, and you can go look at why they make fun of him. This is a family channel. We're not going to say what his nickname is, but it rhymes with Buck. So, what was wrong with Ian Machado Garry is nothing in his fight game. The guy will go to war. He'll go and he will wrestle with you. He will keep you at distance. He'll strike with you. He will fight you for multiple rounds. He'll engage in a slugfest, or he'll fight you at distance. He can take you down. He can defend takedowns, and he is a true 170 pounder. The only problems people have with him are simply his personal life and whatever all the details you want to go in with that, which we will break down before their fight card. But ultimately, Ian Garry has been training with Charles Oliveira's gym, Shoot to Box, in Brazil. It's an excellent gym. You know, the guy is completely locked in. He seems like from the beginning, he was somebody who maybe the next McGregor, right? He's got that same sort of accent to him. He can go out there. He can bring that star power from Europe, from Brazil, maybe from other places. But he's fighting an Islam Makhachev, who a lot of people are acting like is the reaper of the world, right? We're acting like Islam cannot lose. And I don't know if I see the same thing. I'm excited for this fight because I believe Ian is going to bring the fight to Islam. And he's going to be much, much taller. And we've seen Islam struggle at points with Volkanovski's boxing, with boxing from other people. Even, you know, I personally never thought JDM had a chance. I knew there was other things like that, but there's some bad matchups for Islam at 170. And I think this idea in their head where, you know, we talked about this with Ilya. Ilya can go back to 45 and be that champion, run through that division. He's already beaten Volkanovski. He's already had these fights, right? But he doesn't like that weight cut. And so he's up at 55. Islam hates the weight cut to 55, and now he's going up to 70. That can be great. But there's not slouches at 70 at the moment. There's some good fighters in that division, with Ian Machado, Garry being one of them. And I think that length, that size, and that power is really going to test Islam's chin because he ate a lot of clean shots against Volk, and I believe he lost the first fight against Volkanovski, who is a smaller guy, right? I mean, Volk at times has looked big, but he can easily make the weight, whereas Islam couldn't. And so now if we're talking about 15 pounds, we just saw this exact same situation with Justin Gaethje and Ilia Topuria. We saw a guy moving up in Ilia Topuria and maybe not respecting the power and the boxing coming back at him from Justin Gaethje, a real 55er, and his face paid the price. So if Islam goes in there with a similar game plan and a couple of his takedowns get stuffed early, you are going to see him lose this fight. And again, we're going to break it down in greater detail. Some big matchups for the UFC. We have the return of the Mac. We have massive fights coming up. These champions, these guys, we need to appreciate them while they're here because eventually they'll be gone and out of the sport. And then we'll be left with some of the bums that we're going to talk about next. I joke. The fight night happening on Saturday. Let's get into our last segment of the day, UFC Fight Night Vegas.
Hello, put me back on now. Jose, are you listening? Jose, keep that belt listening. McGregor's coming for you. He'll do you in two. 1 minute, McGregor, 1 on him.
All right, guys, let's wrap up the show by talking about the UFC Fight Night happening this Saturday in Las Vegas at the Apex, a venue that the UFC built during COVID to be able to put on some of these fights during a time where they needed to control, having no crowd, control who comes to the building so we can test everybody, make sure fighter safety was first and foremost. Now we have the Apex, this venue that they can put on fights now regularly. The cage is a little smaller, the crowd capacity a little smaller, but oftentimes that means violence is ready and primed. Guys ready to prove themselves. Some fighters you've never heard of, but let's change that. Time to get into it. We're going to talk the last fight on the prelims, and then we're going to talk the main card. If you'd like a more detailed breakdown on all of the fights on the card, there are multiple channels who do an excellent job of doing that. They go deep into tape study, deep into the betting lines. Here at SamCentre, though, we like to give you a reason for why you should tune in. Let's talk the next 6 fights. First and foremost, I want to talk El Gallo Negro, the Black Rooster. And if you speak Spanish, you know why I'm giggling a little bit. Gallo Negro and Kevin Borjas taking on Andre Lima to wrap up the prelims. A guy in Kevin Borjas, which maybe I'm biased because his nickname is hilarious. I think he's an extremely good striker. I saw him take on Rodriguez at the Mexico City card and drop him 3 times in the first round. I've seen this man go to decision with the champion, Joshua Van. And so if you're in there with guys who are that good at striking and you're showing that you can hang, you are going to be the better striker than an Andre Lima who is mainly a submission artist. A guy who wants to grapple, who wants to really control the pace of the fight. He is going in there against El Gallo Negro, who is here to cause chaos. Andre Lima is an undefeated fighter at 11-0 and a guy that I believe is probably deserving of the minus 700 price tag. But to me, it's obscene that in a cage fight against a guy in Andre Lima, let's get this right here, who went to split decision against Mitch Raposo. Do you know who Mitch Raposo is? No, you don't. And no disrespect to you, Mitch. You're fighting on this card, and I think you actually might be Alan Nascimento. But Mitch Raposo sucks. He doesn't suck, but he's not that good, right? And he's not that big. And so he's going up against a guy now in El Gallo Negro, Kevin Borjas, who can really strike and really hurt you with damage and forward pressure. He can defend takedowns, maybe not at a level that's going to matter, and that's maybe why we see the line priced so widely. The books really believe that Lima's going to go in there and sub Kevin Borjas, and that could be the way you play it, right? You could play Lima by dominant decision or by submission because he's going to have the grappling and wrestling advantage. Or you can go out there, have some fun, put your nuts on the table, and bet Kevin Borjas KO at 9-1. And that's what we're doing. That is our SamCentre prediction. Kevin Borjas, he's going to end the prelims by knocking out 11-0 Andre Lima and cashing us that 9-1 ticket. SamCentre official prediction. Moving up into the card, we have the first fight on the actual main card. Vinicius Oliveira moving up in weight to take on Andre Fili. And the UFC said to Vinicius Oliveira, you cannot keep missing weight. This is your job as a fighter to make weight. You now need to move up and take on a guy in Andre Fili who is an experienced UFC fighter. Fili has been in there with everybody, and he gives everybody competitive decisions. He's well-rounded. He'll take you to decision. He has the cardio. He has submission ground game, and he has the ability to put hands on you and knock you out. Fili is not the guy who's going to one-shot KO you. He does kind of like to put on that pressure and really accumulate damage. So this fight is likely to go long, especially now with Vinicius kind of warming up into that new weight class. And we're going to have to see, a guy in Oliveira who's done nothing but do damage so far in his UFC career, and he's fought some really good fighters. People like to clown on Vinicius simply because he ended up losing in his most recent fight. Okay, that's great. Mario Bautista is a real tough matchup. And so he lost to Mario Bautista in the second round near the end there in a fight where he was clearly outmatched. And at this point in his career, Vinicius had to move up because he just could not consistently make weight. And so he's now taking on a guy in Andre Fili who is just as experienced as a guy in Mario Bautista, but I believe it's the Make-A-Wish version of Mario Bautista. He's a little bit worse everywhere. And the fight against Bautista was competitive for Oliveira. So I honestly think Vinicius is a prospect to watch. He's an exciting guy. He's a guy who will go out there, and even later in the fight, if he loses a round one, he's still going to look to do damage and cause harm. Fili is a guy who wants to go out there and fight smart. So we're going to see, is there UFC levels to this? Is Vinicius a guy who really can go out there and crush cans, but at a guy like Lima, or at a guy like Fili, he's going to go out there and struggle? We'll see. I think the ways you play this is Vinicius Oliveira by finish, or you take Andre Fili on points, or potentially a late third round finish simply off of damage accumulation. I don't believe Vinicius is going to get tired now. He's up in weight. He doesn't have to go through a difficult cut. It's just going to simply be a matter of, does his power translate? Does his speed translate? And does he look like the smaller fighter up in weight, right? Because we know who Fili is at this point. We know he'll go out there, he'll fight, he'll be competitive, but he has lost a lot. And so he's fighting a real prospect. Give me Vinicius Oliveira. Super excited for this one. Moving up the card, we have two guys who you have never heard of, and there is good reason for that. We have an undefeated Magomedov. Everybody's going to be very, very excited about that. And I can hear the groans from the fans already. No, this is going to be a boring fight. Let's skip it. Wrestling. But actually, no. Magomedov is somebody who goes out there and finishes all 10 of his fights. And now he's finished all 10 of his fights against somebody named Betsultan Taleulu. That's one of his competitors. I'll put Betsultan Taleulu's photo right here, because the guy does not look like he looks like he'd lose in a fight to me, right? So let's take this record, this 10-0, this undefeated Dagestani killer, with a grain of salt. But I don't believe he should be punished for fighting who he's fought, right? He's gone out there and he's taken care of business in the third round, in the second round, and in the first round. He's shown he has the cardio to be able to finish these cans. And so let's see. He's fighting a guy with some level of experience, a guy whose name I won't even try to pronounce. But there's a good amount of action that could happen here. Give me Magomedov under a round and a half, just as a really prop-up fight now to be able to show the UFC hey, we have this undefeated killer, and then he can go get fraud checked in a couple fights by somebody really good at the division. Moving on, we're going to talk C-Rod, Christian Rodriguez taking on Haider Emil. A fight that should be quite good, right? Both guys coming off of losses, but Haider Emil showing that he likes to bring violence in the cage. When he can't do that, he's lost decisions, he's lost times where he's been point fought a little bit, and that could be what happens here. You know, C-Rod has shown he can fraud check prospects, he can fraud check guys with not clean striking who rely on their wrestling and just trying to bully you. He beat Rahul Rosas, he beat some other guys, but he's starting to lose now when he's taking on some higher level competition. And I still don't know if Haider Emil is that higher level competition or not. What I know about Emil is he wants to come forward and he wants to go out there and do damage, and he fought a William Gomis and he was able to be just picked apart at range at different times, or so I thought. But he went in there and he put damage on the Frenchman, right? He puts guys down and he's able to do things in the cage where if you are not ready for a war, if Rodriguez comes out there thinking he's going to fight at range, control the distance, Emil is going to come out there and put hands on you and he could finish you in under a minute. Because this guy's looking out there to cause harm. He's looking out there to take you down. If he takes you down, he doesn't just want to control you. He wants to bring ground and pound. He is going to wing overhands until his cardio fails. So there's two ways to play this fight. Either Haider Emil by early finish or C-Rod by late finish / decision. I am actually going to lean Christian Rodriguez in this fight simply because I believe he's going to be much more technical, avoid those big overhands, and just kind of piece up Emil. And we've seen Emil have that bit of cardio issues in the past. That's the official prediction for this one, but I don't care too much about the fight. I just want to see violence. Moving on to the fight card, we have two fights left. We have Ion Cutelaba taking on Navajo Sterling in a matchup at 205 pounds at light heavyweight. That actually is quite exciting, and it has real implications for the division. You know, Ion Cutelaba is a guy who has made a resurgence at 205 pounds recently, has shown us he's capable of grappling. He's shown us he's capable of putting a pace on guys and making them break in the cage. He can fight, he can box, he can grapple, he can do a lot of different things. And at 205 pounds, he's done well for himself. And he's taking on a guy in Navajo Sterling who's undefeated at coming from City Kickboxing, and we haven't seen Navajo fight that massive level of competition yet, and this simply isn't a massive step up, but it is going to be a step up, and it's going to be a guy who's going to bring the fight to Navajo. And Navajo likes to settle in, manage distance, counter strike, pick his shots and his opportunities, and early on, he will not have that opportunity against Ion Cutelaba, because Ion Cutelaba is going to come out there, grapple him, and put a pressure on him, and we're going to see what Navajo Sterling is made of. And I actually have no doubts that Navajo is willing to engage in a fight. He talked about in his interviews that he likes to grapple. He loves it, actually. He says it's his coaches who want him to stay on the feet because he believes, and they believe, that he is more technical on the feet than a lot of the guys that he's faced. So far, he's been correct. But against a guy in Cutelaba, you are going to be forced to fight. Now, what I think will probably happen is Cutelaba is going to shoot a takedown in the first round, and Navajo Sterling is going to accept that takedown because he said it himself. He likes to grapple. He likes to do these things. And then we're going to see, is Navajo a little too confident in his abilities, or is that confidence well warranted? At City Kickboxing, training with Carlos Ulberg, the current champion at 205, training with a lot of high-level coaches and high-level champions at different weight classes who have come out of City Kickboxing, Navajo Sterling should, in theory, not be surprised by anything that Ion Cutelaba has to offer in the cage. But he might be, right? You don't know, and everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? The most famous quote of all time, and we could see it. My official prediction is simply this: Navajo Sterling is able to find that counter shot in round 2 or 3, or it goes to decision and he was the more clean, technical pressure fighter the entire time. But if Ion Cutelaba can get in there in the first round early on, control the pace, control the tempo, you could potentially see Navajo Sterling break, or just have no power left and nothing left in those later rounds, where then Ion can simply walk him down. Official prediction, though, I want to see Navajo Sterling, the Kiwi, I want to see him get the job done, continue to be a star, because he has real star power, real potential. People love the City Kickboxing gym. Ion Cutelaba, he's a good fighter, but he doesn't have that star power. Give me Navajo Sterling, and then give me Navajo Sterling with a chance to potentially challenge for the top 15 at light heavyweight after this fight. And for our main event, we have a rematch. Manuel Cap taking on Kyoji Horiguchi. And I apologize to any Japanese fans I have, but that I feel was pretty good. Kyoji Horiguchi, one of the better Japanese fighters of all time. A man who had a very real chance to taste UFC gold years ago when he lost to Demetrius Johnson. Mighty Mouse, one of the greatest fighters of all time. So it's hard to say that that's a bad loss. Horiguchi then went over there, back to Japan, back to Rizin, and he fought Manuel Cap. He fought a lot of guys on Rizin. He was a champion over there. He was one of their biggest stars. And Rizin's a little bit different of a promotion. They have slightly different rules, and one of the biggest things that you'll notice is they fight in a boxing ring as opposed to a UFC octagon. In that first fight, it was multiple years ago at this point, Cap gave Horiguchi a good fight. Both guys were rocked at different times. There were eye pokes, there were head clashes. It wasn't the most clean, but you'll see what has happened since. Horiguchi has come back to the UFC and shown that he's just as good as he was when he was here before. He might be a little older, but he's still extremely fast. He's extremely technical, and his fight IQ now, being in the cage so many times, is off the charts. Horiguchi will go out there and be clean, be technical, and he's going to punch you in the face a lot. And Cap is the same sort of way. When Cap was younger, he fought a little bit more chaotic, and I think it was clear that Horiguchi was going to beat him with the levels experience, with the experience in the cage. But since then, Cap has come to the UFC as well and done really well for himself. He's fought the who's who. He's fought Alexandre Pantoja. He's fought Brendan Roybal. He's fought these guys and done pretty well for himself at different times, the Ode Osborns, and he's gotten in wars, and he's shown us he is UFC level, and he's UFC top 5 level, and he's younger now than Horiguchi, and he's motivated. And so my breakdown is this. I believe it's going to be really exciting back and forth for at least a round and a half. But what I saw going back, watching that first fight, because we're SamCentre, baby, we watched the tape. Cap had multiple opportunities where he could take down Horiguchi. And when you're in the boxing ring, there's different ways that Horiguchi can be more creative to take those submissions and not get taken down. He can take his feet, he can wrap his arms, he can step outside of the cage a little bit, and you can't do that in the octagon because the fence is there. So actually, give me Cap to be the faster striker. I believe Horiguchi will be the more technical and has the opportunity to find those counter strikes. It's Cap early, under 2.5 rounds, or it's Horiguchi late, I believe. If Horiguchi can go out there, defend a lot of these takedowns, be the cleaner striker, and really put a bit of damage on Cap in the early rounds, hit him with body shots, hit him with counters. Cap has been known to maybe not have the full 5-round cardio and to fade a little bit later in fight because he's so explosive with his shots and the way he manages his takedowns and everything there. Cap, being the younger fighter, being the more motivated and really looking to get back to that championship level. Give me Cap to end up. And this is not where I thought I was going to do that prediction. I thought looking at the tape, before looking at everything, that I was going to go with Horiguchi. And my apologies to my Japanese friends one more time. Manuel Cap is going to take home the fight and give me a finish in under 2.5 rounds for Cap. Maybe ground and pound. That would be my official prediction. And absolutely, though, a decision wouldn't shock me. Both these guys are extremely tough. They've been in there with each other before. They might start slow. There might be some respect for each other, but we'll see. This was our Friday show, UFC Fridays. We got on a rant. We talked about a lot of things, and I am just so grateful that you guys decided to take your Friday, your Saturday, your Sunday, whatever day you're watching this, and be here with me. We've spoke about this multiple times. There's a lot of fun content on the way. We're going to be filming things with the CFL, with the Edmonton Elks, hopefully getting player interviews coming. But this was our UFC Fridays. This was SamCentre. As always, thank you so much. SamCentre out.